Picking what you place your bets on is a tough one, because if you kind of hitch your wagon to the wrong horse, it can be fatal. Actually, if I look at, there were so many other CMSs that started at the same time that WordPress did, and we were one of 50 or 60. And one of the reasons I think we were evolutionarily successful, the follows are like a tree of all the different CMSs, was our choice of platforms. We hitched our wagon to PHP and MySQL, even though those weren't my favorite languages. I kind of preferred Postgres or Python at the time, but there was a practicality to them and the way they were able to be distributed and available, especially on these like $2 or $3 a month hosts, so cheap and easy to run them in different ways. That was the reason I was like, okay, we gotta, we'll make it work. And so even though like this language is, has some things that I don't love, let's make the best of it. And it ended up being a really good investment. And many other folks at the time, Yahoo, but then later Facebook, Wikipedia, others who sort of also hitched their wagons to PHP, we ended up getting a lot of tailwinds from the improvements they made to that open source community. So for example, when PHP went from version 6 to 7, it basically doubled in performance. So as a startup, this means that all of a sudden that saves me tens of millions of dollars of CapEx, like servers I don't need to buy. Like literally, like we just kind of like upgraded a language one day and everything got more efficient because we were a part of the ecosystem that was the one that was evolutionarily getting the most investment in things. That's always tricky to identify. And there's some things I really, really love, like Erlang, that are so robust and so amazing, but maybe didn't have that same or Ruby. Actually Ruby is probably a better example. Ruby has it now with Shopify and others, but like at the time it didn't yet have enough of that backing that the core engine was getting the improvements that you kind of got some of this for free optimization and tailwinds on you, which again, that means you don't have to raise money, lose equity. That means that can have all these downstream effects. It's a technological decision, but maybe that meant I didn't need to raise money at an opportune time, which meant I would have lost control of the company, which meant maybe Automattic wouldn't be where it is today. Or, there's all sorts of downstream impacts of what might seem like a very disconnected decision.
It's interesting. PHP was actually a topic I wrote down as something we could get into, because when I was leading the ConvertKit team, there was a period where we had no engineering leader. We were in between leaders and I was recruiting, and I actually managed the team directly. I'm not an engineer by background, but it was such a wonderful opportunity to learn so much. And seeing these debates over technologies to adopt or not adopt was a huge aspect of the engineering culture, right? Is like, do we want to place a bet on a thing that opens up new possibilities because it's new and it's based on today's web standard, but it might not continue in 3 years to be supported by a wider ecosystem? We might not be able to recruit people if it doesn't continue, et cetera, et cetera. Or do we use something that's more proven and has been around a long time, but that might have frustrations that aren't reflected by the modern web, And these are the trade-offs. So if we back out of that and we look at principally, and maybe we look forward from where you are. So like that's an example from the past, right? PHP is this thing and it gets a lot of flack because it does have shortcomings. Like there's a lot of engineers who would say like, I'm never working in PHP again in my life. I'm done with that phase of my career for whatever reason. Maybe they want to be on the edge. And it's really tempting to want to be on the edge because you feel cool. It's like I'm on the edge. I'm learning. I'm leading. But in building a company that stands a test of time, that might not be the best place to be. So I guess as you look forward and you think now from where you are on what technologies to adopt or even other aspects of building the company, what are the principles you use for making those bets?
Well, we were lucky that PHP was primarily we were using it as a web language, right? So it was delivered through the browser, which meant we got access to the investment in browser engines, Chromium and others, which also then enabled JavaScript, which enabled Node, so that is probably the richest development ecosystem around. Maybe some stuff with Go and others, but Rust is kind of interesting. But yeah, the browser engines are probably the place that have the most investments. If you just look at the hundreds of millions of dollars of engineering effort that goes into improving those, securing those, everything. as a sort of development environment. So where it's going is actually, I think the browser paradigm and the sandboxing and everything there is definitely the future. It's getting wild. So there's something now for WordPress called playgrounds. We can now run PHP in the browser. So it's kind of come full circle. It's kind of wild. You can go to wordpress.org/playground and it will create an instance of WordPress in real time in like a couple of seconds, depending on the speed of your computer, anywhere from like 2 to 20 seconds. It will create a whole server environment. Things that before you used to have to download and compile, like Apache, MySQL, PHP, etc. And we could just do this in real time, instantly, and allow you to play with it, which is really cool for learning, for testing, for this sort of transient environment. It means that we could embed it at the edge. We could put it on a CDN. We could run WordPress. It's the biggest mind mess thing I've experienced in the past couple of years was when I saw that happen. And that's enabled by WASM, Web Assembly Language. So where it's going, it's kind of cool because the technology, we're at a time of like super abundance. The technology can do almost anything. And so for where it's going, for us, particularly as a company, we really have to come back to the humans. We've actually never in WordPress's history been constrained by the servers or the tech. It's always been by our ability to design and create a intuitive experience for providing the goals that people want. Also helping shape the environment of like what's possible, where people should expect. Because there's a world, maybe if WordPress hadn't existed or something like WordPress hadn't existed, where like we'd all just have like profiles on Facebook now. That would be the web page. That's kind of what happened with China and WeChat. Web pages aren't really important. But the open web movement, which WordPress is a contributor to, has really fought hard for why it's important to have a domain and a website and all the things that opens up for, not just for the big folks, the google.com and the facebook.com, but also like everyone else, all the way down to individual blogs or publishers, and, Seth.blog or Tim.blog or FS.blog, right? to refer to Seth Godin, Tim Ferriss, and Shane Parrish, who we've talked about earlier. Their websites can then become whole portals. And so their archives, their ecosystems. For Seth and Tim, we actually create a little chat bot where you can like chat with their archives. And that's pretty exciting. And that's not something that you might get just on a Facebook profile page or a Twitter profile page. So the ability to really own and control that enables a lot more innovation and continuity. Also ownership. The idea of like a sovereignty over your digital identity is so critical and key. I want to live in an ownership society, not a society where someone else owns everything and I'm just kind of borrowing it.
Right.
That's not freedom. And I worry about that as we particularly move to the cloud. What can we do to give more power in the hands of people? And luckily, Moore's law and all the cool stuff that they're doing with chips and everything, I think will help this. Our phones and computers we're using really a fraction of the capabilities of them right now. And I'm very excited to unlock more local computing, distributed computing.
Yeah, there's so much here. I mean, I think in your latest State of the Word address, you talked about data portability as something that y'all really want to work on as a priority. And, in my context, we kind of got our asses kicked a little bit by Substack, to be frank, at ConvertKit. I mean, ConvertKit's a great business and it's not going anywhere. And that's the beautiful thing about how it's been built, about how we intentionally built it while I was there and how Nathan continues to build it. But Substack had a lot going for it, But what's interesting is they're taking an open platform, which is email, and building lock-in on top of it. And now ConvertKit's started to move that way as well. So I don't want to act like it's like good and bad or anything like that. But if you look at things, small decisions like you don't pay for a number of email addresses on the platform, or you didn't used to on Substack, in a way, that's a lock-in feature.
Yeah.
Because all your other alternatives are that you do pay for it and you're dependent on the Substack ecosystem for your site, your forms, your email hosting, sending the emails, publishing your posts. It becomes these little pieces of lock-in along the way that make it really hard. Even if technically you can export your subscribers, it makes it really hard to move. It makes it really hard to maintain control. And that's always made me nervous. There's something I really love about, not to like toot WordPress's horn, but I love that about my site. Like barrettbrooks.com is mine. I can plug any email tool into it. I can publish when I want. I have control over the format. There's just a lot of good stuff to be said about owning it.
Well, and as you mentioned, and I'll give full credit, there's so much to admire about Substack, including the fact that
Totally.
from the beginning, they've given you the ability to export your subscribers, including, I think, even
Yes. And
your
I
like
credit
credit
them for
cards
that.
and stuff, which is,
Yeah.
I love, make it easy for people to leave. They're far more likely to stay.
Yeah.
And they've given people, you just described a number of them, really good reasons to stay of the network. But what's beautiful about business is the most, I think Jeff Bezos said it, and I call it the most terrifying phrase ever uttered, which is, your margin is my opportunity.
It's so true.